My brothers, my brothers, my brothers, my sisters, my sisters, my sisters. This is the Godfather, Mike Saad, joined here in the studio by Cyber Aki and the Peacemaker. We welcome you once again to Black Men Declare. It's our extreme goal and objectives to bring a perspective from the Black male in America that impacts not only America, but Black men all over the world. For we all, at some point or another, we have been infected and influenced by this bipolar reality that describes America and also the parents from which America was birthed. Now, we discussed last week how we all have been tainted, we all have been poisoned with this process, with this concept, with this philosophy that we are calling bipolarism. Now we know those are extreme opposites. We know we have people that we may even know, maybe family, friends, co-workers, whatever. Their bipolar is so significant from a clinical perspective, they may even be under some form of medication. But as Cyber Key pointed out so beautifully last week, as well as the Peacemaker, it is something way deeper than what we may even begin to understand. So tonight, we're going to deal with the founding fathers. What was the mindset? What was the reality of the founding fathers of this nation? And we're not going to waste time in going and naming all of them. You could just go up and just plug in founding fathers and in the search engine, and you will see who those men are. As a matter of fact, we probably would do ourselves a disservice by attempting to name them and bring attention to who they are. Suffice it to say, they are part of why we're in the situation that we're in today. I want to ask our brothers to join me tonight, Cyber Aki and the Peacemaker, as we enter into this discussion. Because if we break it down, it's like this. When the founding fathers came here and was part of this, they were an elitist group. They were not poor people, as we may sometimes think. There was an elitist group that wanted to come in and get independence from the mother country, from their mother country. And in the process of doing so, we could say they were double-minded because some of them owned slaves. And so we know about the great documents that were created, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and all of that. Yet at the end of the day, they had to be bipolar because many of them owned slaves. How are you going to declare yourself free and that God has given all men certain inalienable rights, that they are free to pursue their life, pursue their dreams, when in fact you turn around and you own slaves? As a matter of fact, you look at the first president of the United States of America, George Washington, I might as well say his name, and his wife Martha, they had slaves. So, Cyber Key, come on, how does that really, what does that deliver to your soul? That the very base of this nation, the very birth, that from the inception, it was already here. Come on, my brother.
Peace to my brothers, my colleagues in this fight for truth, freedom, justice, and equality. And I'm going to give a shout out to the Principal Seven that they say are the founding fathers: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison, who they're saying are the seven principal founding fathers. And if we do the history and a deep dive into those seven men alone, actually, you could do it of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, and see that those guys were what they would call wickedly great. Wickedly great, meaning that, like you said, they had double minds. Like to have slaves, but to believe that you are a righteous Christian, but you own property, human beings that you say are less than animals. Um, and you freeing yourself, you so-called want to free yourself from the Brits, but then you're going to have slaves. I think the comedian George Collins, I believe, I can't think of the comedian name right now. He said it so eloquently, about this double-mindedness of our founding fathers to want to free themselves from a people, but then bring along slaves with them, and not only bring along slaves, but to kill off the natives that were already here. If that's not double-mindedness, I don't know what is.
We might call that one, Simon. We might call that one triple-minded. I mean, if you think about it, because when they came in and tried to enslave the indigenous population at that time, the indigenous people couldn't deal with it. They couldn't handle with what these Europeans were trying to accomplish. So at the end of the day, now that might be a different one right there. Triple-minded. That was a triple-minded. But peacemaker, my brother, when you think about a subject matter that we're going to deal with deeper next week, how is it? It's just your own opinion that a human being who's supposed to now be coming to this new place could even frame their thinking into a mindset so focused for their freedom. I know it's a chattel property thing, but what does your spirit say, your soul, about that kind of person? Is that a person that you would say is righteous?
Greetings to our sisters and our brothers of Black Men Declare, and to you all that's listening. Definitely, I would not say that that is a righteous man. When you think about the fact that these men and women that came from England to escape this rulership of the Queen and the King of England, that they come over to this land and then they say, you know what, we don't want to be subject to anybody but ourselves. And then for them to turn around and say, though we don't want to be subject to anyone else, we want to have people that's subject to us. I'm reminded of that literary tale of the Scarlet Letter, where there was a preacher that fell in love with a young woman, but the young woman was unmarried. And because he was married, if I'm not mistaken, my memory serves me right, I believe he was married, or either he was just a preacher and could not take on a wife. And yet this young lady who ended up being involved sexually with this man, they scarred her. They said, from now on, because you have committed adultery, you're going to have this letter put on all your clothing. It's and throughout her life, until this preacher came up and said, no, that's she didn't do it by herself. She did it with me. I see it as this man at first was double-minded. He let the pressures of the world taint him and said, I would rather listen to them than listen to my heart and what's in my mind and in my spirit. I would say the same thing has happened to these forefathers. Instead of listening to their heart and listening to their spirit, the right spirit, they decided, I'm going to have people subject to me. I'm going to have people submit to me. And despite the fact that these people are human beings, I'm going to have them subservient to me. That's not what we all ought to do. And definitely that's the sign of somebody that's double-minded and unrighteous.
All right. I'm going to give another personal example, man, from these founding fathers. Thomas Jefferson. We all know the story of Sally Hemings, right? I mean, here's a young lady that allegedly traveled with this man to France, and they cohabitated, of course, and she had children by him, and that's been validated and proven that his offspring are still here, and they get together. And although still a lot of the Europeans and the Anglos don't want to admit it, but think about her, the level of double-mindedness she had. It said that she literally hid from others while she secretly met with him in this affair that lasted for years. I mean, you talking about a dude that was double-minded. That's a double-minded there. You want to be a slave, but although you're a slave, you got something that I'm addicted to. So he became addicted to a level of double-mindedness, and that medication, he was dealing with is called lust. And so again, it's one of those things. Cyber, man, when you think about a dude like Thomas Jefferson and what he did and the atrocity that to a young lady, remember also, my brothers, many years ago, man, when a woman reached the age of menstruation and she began to flow, man, she was considered a woman. And Sally, from what I read and understand, she was a teenager when Thomas Jefferson and all his righteousness, did to her, laid with her, and then acted like he didn't know who she was. Cyber, come on, talk to me, my brother, about such situations. We know those took places in many other places. So when you got a founding father setting an example of laying with someone like that, what else is it for other Anglo Europeans to do other than follow the suit of one of their founding fathers?
Well, records say that she was somewhere around 15, I mean 14, 13, 14 years old, and he was around between 40 and 46 years old. But he's the father, he's the founding father that we all look up to as an American citizen. What kind of person, what type of person, or what is our mindset to look at this person to say that he's some type of role model or not. It's depending on you know the laws of the land, and we see it now. Okay, let's say for example, the law of the land at that time was that okay, they are legal. Well, now you have where we clearly say that that's not a legal situation, but we have known entities that are caught up in this Epstein list that are in our ranking files of the of leadership in this country. They're still doing the same thing. So how I can look at the time frame of Thomas Jefferson, the time frame of some of them, and I can actually say, you know what, culture, everything was saying this was okay. We improved as a citizen. I mean, as a country, we improved and said, you know what, this was not okay. But you still have the rank and file of leadership of participating in this type of lifestyle, but we're supposed to, bow down to you or look up to you as a leadership because you are a leader of this free nation. No, come on, that's double-mindedness.
That's double-mindedness in its best. I was laughing, but forgive me, brothers, for laughing. Let's think about our brother Billy Clinton. He was in the White House. Think about John F. K., one of the heroes as a president, yet he had a fling allegedly with Marilyn Monroe. Now, I know those are not black women, but I'm mentioning it simply because that whoredom spirit is manifested, period, in the Anglo male and the historical environment. Now, think about everything the nation went through and politicians went through in an effort to do something to build. And he said, I did not have sex with that woman. And went on to say, all depends on what your definition of sex is. Definition of what your sex is. But at the end of the day, it's that same spirit that then drove those founding fathers to do what they did with our ancestors, our great 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 grandmothers and great great grandmothers, grandmothers, to the point to where it affected us and infected our thinking so much that at some point, according to Tara Hunter, some of you may have heard the book Bound in Wedlock, it led our women, our ancestors, into developing a manipulative spirit, a spirit that would even at points in time make them more attractive, or they would attempt to attract themselves, be attracted to some of the men, Anglo men, that will be on those plantations because there may be some they didn't want to deal with. So, brothers, especially you, Cyber, how has that caused even our women today to develop this manipulative spirit when you know you're going to be taken advantage of and you learn how to make yourself appealing to someone because you know it's going to happen and you don't have a choice?
Who did you call on, me or Peacemaker? Peacemaker?
I'm sorry to you. How did
Oh,
you, Cyber? How does how do you reconcile that reality of what happened to our women?
brother, I'm laughing, man, because as a pretty handsome young man growing up, you know, all the women want to take advantage of somebody that look as good as I did or growing up. But you know, it's a real tricky situation in our community. Um, and I know we're talking about America, but I always come back to Black America because whatever happens in America, you best believe it's probably 20 times worse in Black America. And I hear a lot of people talk about the music of today, the rap music and the um, innuendos or the straight up lyrics that talks about women and our women being vicious and our women being, you know, overly sexualized. I grew up on a lot of old school music, riding with my uncles. Uh, One of my uncles was a singer in a band, did a lot of opening shows, and I listened to a lot of their music. In the '60s, '50s, '60s, '70s, it wasn't straight up like our music, like the rap music is today. It's not. It wasn't like overtly. It was hidden messages. It was messages that were in the songs that were already vibrating in women's ears to begin to start that process of what we are seeing today, the over sexualization of women. So if you come up in the '60s and you notice black exploitation and you watch the Foxy Brown or you watch some of the movies that came out, you begin to see the ladies in the short dresses, the pimps, calling the women, the B word at that time. So if you reflect on just us and see that this process has been in place and has been a playbook has been run from the early 30s, 40s, 50s up until now, and we're getting the brunt of this overly sexualized woman, black or white, doesn't matter. We're getting over sexualized, over dramatized type of woman that we all, you know, in our closets, we all we all like. We all have some type of, you know, fantasy or whatever, you know, what, you know, they say what goes on in the bedroom's in the bedroom, but we all have that attraction to it because that's all we heard. Unless you separate yourself from that from a time frame, that's all you know is the over sexualization of our women to the point where our young girls now, 8, 7, 8, 9, is hearing the Cardi B's, the Megan Thee Stallions, the Sexy Red. They singing these songs in school.
Let's bring it back to so you say you would agree with Tara Hunter then. It sounds like that sexualization process that started way back again with those founding fathers, those owners, those whatever. And then once they learned they learned that the manipulative spirit to the point where now they're fully sexually exploited. And the sad part on the double-minded piece is that they embrace it. They embrace it. Peacemaker. There was one time when we had a situation where a brother, he was going to marry Russell Wilson when he got ready to marry Sierra. The word was, you know, he was a believer. The word was, he would say, we're not going to have sex until we're married. And that spirit that started way back with those founding fathers had those sisters then saying, who is he to come out and say he's not going to have sex with a woman until they're married? Now, there was a point in time where, you know, holding back was the thing to do. But from what I understand now, brothers have to be the one that want to make the decision to hold back if you want to figure out if there's somebody you want to invest time in. So, Peacemaker, this may be an unfair question, but as a addition to what Cyber Aki is saying, how aggressive are Black women when it comes to that particular subject matter?
To add to what my brother has already stated, I think you have to look at the issue of these founding fathers was all about power and authority, and how they had a mindset that they felt that they were above the law, and that because of their status that they could do whatever they wanted to whoever they wanted to. And when you look at today's society and you see most of our sisters, you will see that they are drawn to that power. They're drawn to those who we would say are the playmakers, the ballers, the bosses. It is mightily funny that every time you see a basketball player or football player and they have this great earning potential, you see a number of women being around them. Now, some of it is that they perceive and they have decided that because of the status that they have, that they can do and say anything and they deserve to have multiple women. But then you have some women that say, that's what I'm attracted to. That's what I want. And when you go back and look at our ancestors, they didn't want to work in the field. They would prefer to be in the house. So there was some women that said, okay, if I have to sleep with master, or at least sleep with master's son, so that I don't have to be out in the sun and I don't have to get treated like everybody else, and I get put on this pedestal, then so what? I will do what I need to do in order to survive. And I think that's some of the issues that we have today, that we have a survivor's remorse when it comes to our women, that they have decided that whatever I need to do to survive and live a comfortable life, Now, not all women, of course, and I would never include all women, but there are a lot of women, especially when you ask them, and being a single man myself, when you ask them what is it that you're looking for, or I'm looking for a man to make six figures, I'm looking for him to put me in a big house, I'm looking for him to put me in a car. What about the character of the man? What about, is you want a man that loves God, that's going to treat you right? Unfortunately, we are still dealing with that survivor's remorse, where some of our sisters and our Caucasian sisters are looking for that power, looking for that boss, and they're looking for the easy route.
That's beautiful, brother. Well stated. You put that back together, man. I really like the way you put that together. Brothers, let's have some final thoughts. Take a minute or so, and of course, next week we're gonna move into another aspect of what you just mentioned, Peacemaker, which is going to be the concept of religion and morality, because that's the next phase of this lie that we were told, that the Puritans and Quakers were the ones that impacted the nation so righteousness. But just final thoughts for a minute or two, Cyber Key. What's your final thoughts?
We have to we have to begin to admit that this nation was found on a bipolar, double-mindedness, wickedly principles. We have to, as long as we continue to think that this nation is so upright, when actually is uh, crickedly wrong. Um, until we come to the table and talk about those issues and challenges that this nation was founded on, we're going to continue to have trouble within this nation, um, almost to the point where the nation destroys itself. And I believe that's exactly what we see going on right now. We never had these talks to clear up the double-mindedness, the bipolarness, the crookedness, the wickedness that the nation was found on. And because we never dealt with that, here we are from some say 1555, some say 1619, but here we are in 2025 going back to that same wickedness, crookedness, double-mindedness that the nation was founded on.
Peacemaker.
Yeah, until we start realizing that despite our status, we're all human beings. We all bleed the same red blood. We all have the same mindset. When we get to a place that we don't allow the status, the money that we make, the influence that we have over others, then we will never be able to truly adjust or truly be a righteous nation. When we get to the place that we can not be in the back of a television room and tell a commentator, "Oh, I like to grab them by the," or when we have somebody else that's having these big old parties and they doing whatever they want to. Now, one is a brother and one is an Anglo-Saxon. But both of them have the same mindset. Because of the amount of money that I make, because of my status, I can do and say whatever I want to do. And until we start dealing with brothers and people and start dealing with that reality, we're never going to be righteous. We're never going to be right. We're never going to be able to do what our forefathers really set out to be, and that's equal.
Powerful, brothers. It's been my pleasure to just have a conversation with you, brothers, on this subject of the founding fathers. And we know that we did not exhaust all aspects, but we want you, our listening audience, to go and do your own research and find out about our founding fathers. And oftentimes it may be different than what you're programmed to believe. This is the Godfather Mike Side saying, go ahead, and if you checking us out on YouTube, hit that follow button, hit that subscription button, share this with other people. Regardless of what platform you may be picking us up, just know to go out, have conversation, do it in peace and love. Godfather Mike Side.